Okay, in this lecture, we're going to talk about color, right? Which is an extremely rich tool that is often the main thing or the first thing that people are attracted to when they look at a lot of artwork. But whether you're talking about the natural color of things or applied color, it's probably a good idea if we talk about the vocabulary of color first. And I'll let you know right off the bat, I'm not going to go a whole lot into color theory. We have a whole course at Columbia Art 2 that goes into color and a little more into color design, etc. But let's take some real basics here. So here is our color wheel. You've probably all seen that before. Divided up into the colors, or hues, as they're sometimes called. Here we are, all the different hues, the main hues. So we've got your primary colors. There are 3 of them. So there's yellow, blue, and red. So if you mix, in theory, yellow with red, you get orange. Red with blue, you get purple. Blue with the yellow, and you get green, or some variation thereof. So those combinations of the primaries are called the secondary colors. And then the intermediate colors are the ones that are between the primary and the secondary colors. Okay? And you've got a little listing of these over here. The analogous colors are the colors that are together on a color wheel, right? So any of these that are next to each other, maybe up to 4 steps here, would be called analogous colors. And these are often used in interior decorating. It's kind of a good theme to use. It's just a sort of choose a color range and stay within that. Okay, when people talk about complementary colors, those are the colors that are directly across from each other on the color wheel. So the yellow, it would be purple. Here again, you're taking a primary and going over to a secondary. I'm not going to get into split complementaries. There's all kinds of theories if and when you get into painting that you will go into. Also know that, this is real convenient, just having however many of these there are, maybe 15, I don't know how many are here. But this is an infinite range of color, right? Just because they put it in these little pie-shaped wedges doesn't mean a thing. This is an infinite range of color. When you talk about a tint, that means taking the hue or color and adding white to it to lighten it. You get a tint. And when they talk about a shade, you take your hue or color and you add black to it to get a shade. So those are kind of the basic, some of the basic vocabulary. Let's see what we have over here. Okay, this is a whole other system, Munsell. They've sort of divided the entire world into different color readings and theories. Anyway, here you've seen this before, our value scale here from white to black. But also here, all right, on the outside, we have something called the chroma. When you get to the chroma, you're talking about the most intense or saturated color here. So on the very outside, this is the strongest of that hue. And then as you go inward, you start mixing. Like if this was the red, you would be mixing it with the color across from us, in this case, in Munsell's system, the blue-green. And with each step, you would be getting more and more and more gray. That's how you get these middle grays here. And all of the colors on the inside of this system, when you get into the inside of the color wheel, where this yellow-green starts to get more purple and the purple starts to get more yellow, these are called your neutrals, or kind of your earth tones, when they get a little more subtle, more grays, browns, yellows, etc., like that. Okay, let's go on a little bit here, if I can. Okay, can we move on here? Oh, why are we doing this? Okay. Sorry about that. Sometimes that just gets stuck. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is talk about natural colors. Remember when we were talking about texture, we were talking about natural texture, how it just occurs in nature. Well, we've got the same thing with color. So in this case, some artists choose to use the natural material, the natural colors of the material. In this case, some kind of plant fiber, to make these really intricate, very interesting interwoven, looks very modern, but probably a real folk art kind of technique. I don't know whether I'd call this a basket or just a form, but it's really pretty wonderful. Polish up some natural wood, and you're going to invite people to come up and run their hands over it. We all want to do it. Here, I just wanted you to see this very cool usage of cutting the wood and then sort of breaking it again. But this nice, you can see the really different colors in the striations of the wood, different values there. And you really can't beat, natural stones, and in this case, pearls and gold and opals and diamonds. I'm not really big on real gooey jewelry, but this piece to me is really pretty exceptional. In ceramics, those of you who've played with this will go, horsehair. So this is natural clay, just this white tone here. And then once you take it out of a hot kiln, set it down and start laying individual pieces of horse tail or mane, or human hair for that matter, it burns and sends off this sort of smoky residue that you get these wonderful linear patterns here. And I love those patterns. I think my favorite thing, though, is the intense black line. And just always next to that, there's this little fuzz of gray that just is really very cool. So natural colors. You've seen this before. I wanted to show you this again, this jasper stone that was carved for this Nubian piece. I wanted you to see how they used the stone here, the striations of it went off this way, the coloration. And they actually made the carving to fit the way that went. So you've got this deeper tones that's going from this one band of orange in this jasper going up this way. So pretty interesting how they used the stone to dictate how they were going to carve it. Bronze, but this is sort of a silverized bronze patina on there. It's really very beautiful and shows sort of a natural coloring for this Nubian. Then we're going to get here to this natural color of plaster. All right, plaster of Paris is white. It's a real classic sculpture material. So this is an interesting piece by George Segal. It's called The Parking Garage Attendant. So it's this black attendant, but here he is in white plaster, totally bleached out, seeming sort of lifeless against this very vibrant material world here, of the bustling city, makes him look very invisible, or maybe even more than invisible, just forgotten. In the Ming Dynasty, they used the natural color of porcelain, which is a very fine white clay body. Instead of putting lots of color on here, which they could have, they had the skills to do that. As we've talked before, sometimes overcoloration of things really takes away from something else. In this case, maybe we wouldn't be noticing this wonderful big volume of a belly here, and his man boobs, and I mean just the wonderful forms here and the creases. So sometimes you just want to like strip away, there again, economize on the coloration in this case, just so we can really see, this form a little bit better. Frank Lloyd Wright, we've seen other pieces of his work. This is Taliesin in Green Springs, Wisconsin. And this house, you can see, really expresses his philosophy of the natural house, kind of being at one with its environment. You've got wood shingles, you've got native stone that they quarried. This is over a valley here, and down by the river, there's a quarry. They brought up the stone, the natural native stone to use here. Plantings, kind of covering these sharp edges to sort of make it roll into, using, the landscaping here to kind of make it blend in with the greenery around it. He also used local sand to mix with the plaster. So that's how you get this nice warm tone here. I mean, he really did a lot to make the piece really fit with the environment. And here we have landscape design. So landscape architecture, where you're using color and form and texture of the plants that you choose to use. And in this case, this person used the art form of topiary, where you're making shaped bushes or plantings, which are sort of fun. This is Levens Hall in England. And so with landscape design, you are really looking for just what is available in your climate and area. And the other interesting thing about landscape design is that the colors really sort of change daily as things bloom one day and fade another day, or turn red in the fall, or whatever may happen. So you've got weather and season also affecting climate, affecting your colorations. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about applied color. So we have natural color and then color that we apply. Oftentimes we just think of painting, but it could be dyeing or some other form. In this case, this is a Greek statue from the Acropolis in Athens. You can't see a whole lot of what's left here. And oftentimes when we think about the Acropolis in Athens, we think about those bleached white marble sculptures that I think are so beautiful. But we have to know and remember that they were at one time painted, fully painted, so applied color over them. This is one that's a little bit in between. You can still see a little bit of the painting here, and this is pigment mixed with hot wax called encaustic. Painters have used this on canvases or board, this technique as well. And the one cool thing is you don't get those really kind of blank, white eyes if you do the coloration, but this very vibrant, lively eyeballs as opposed to those kind of blind looking ones. Here's another one from the Renaissance, a mother and child made of limestone. Polychromed, when you see something like this, that's another term you're going to hear, polychromed. Poly meaning many, chrome meaning the color. And so a colored piece to look like the real Madonna and Child. So the one cool thing about 3D design is you don't have to paint in the shadows or the shading of these creases or whatever. They just happen, right? Because that's how life is. You get shade from where your light source comes from. This is a kind of a crazy big piece. Let me see if I can get you the name of this. This is an abbey in Germany. But what I wanted you to see here is within this rather elaborate white building. Let's strip it back to just the white. And then they added these very colorful marble or stone columns and paneling here, which matches the very rich tones, those Renaissance blues and reds and dark shades with of the fabric flowing, etc., etc. Kind of there again pulls your eye up to the heavens here, but also at the same time we've got this a little bit more subdued. We're getting a little bit of the shading down here in the altar area. Maybe you're looking a little bit more inward, but another very wonderful use of color. Some would say a little over the top, but okay, this is Sandy Skoglund. What's the name of this piece? Fox Games. So, you know, color can really just draw attention here by she completely painting this restaurant interior in red. It kind of makes it so we look at details, right? When things are all the same color, then you start looking more at values and textures, etc. So maybe we will notice some of the other things on the table as opposed to just these gray foxes, right? That kind of the counterpoint to the red. And they add a little bit of mystery or a lot of mystery, like what the heck is going on here? But interesting use of, you know, totally toning this room in a red. People having fun with applied color. So with computers, etc., and cameras and gels and all of that kind of stuff, we get a whole other sort of possibility with color. In this case, in this X room, we have projected lights onto spinning meshes, cylinder meshes that throw down virtual color on top of these walls, this interior, this installation. And there again, when you're in it, you can almost sort of disappear within this installation. So you become one with the color and the walls, the interior. This is Nikki de St. Phal. This is her Queen Khalifa's Magical Circle. You know, and when people use tile in folk art, a lot of times very traditional tile is very, very colorful because ceramics, you know, have a wonderful range of tones that you can get through with glazes and also its sister art with glass, colored glass that people might use. So I wanted you to look at this a little bit and think about the principles a little bit. So if we're looking at this head on, we can see that it's you know, kind of, it's trying to be a symmetrical balance in a way. It obviously isn't pure symmetrical, but in a way. I wonder what you think is most dominant. I mean, oftentimes reds and yellows are the things that draw you in. But there again, you have this red head up here with these bright white eyes. crowned by this gold and black piece up here that reaches up into the sky with this black bird. I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is pretty crazy. I'm sure I would be looking at this first and then maybe moving up, following this sweep of these colors that are moving inward and up to that bird up in her hand. We can talk about economy. These are very economical creatures, right? We don't see all of their details. They're pretty kind of cartoon-like. Same with the bird. Lots of detail, but not necessarily the detail of a bird or of these serpents, but sort of just these decorative parts. Let's also talk a little bit about the effects of color. We'll look at this for just a second here. This is Toshiko Takezu, a potter from Hawaii, and she really perfected this incredibly rich, intense, saturated blue glaze that she used because it always reminded her of her home in Hawaii, of the water there. So that's one way that people may use color in a very personal sense. We were also talking a little bit about those Ming pots and sculptures. I showed you that white, kind of fat, Buddha-esque sort of guy sitting there in his robes. Well, this is another white Ming pot, but they also did use some color, and you can see here their use of cobalt metallic oxides mixed with water to get a very flowing tone, different ranges of that tone depending on how much water was mixed into it. They also went all the way up to a full polychromed, many-colored glazed piece here. Wonderful way they use the decoration to enhance these bands, and the way this is sort of pie-shaped off, divided, to kind of enhance the fullness of this form. You really get the volume of the piece. Another Ming pot, but this one just using a transparent glaze that you can just see the value differences here. It's all the same color, but the value differences where the glaze would pool. And remember, glaze is just glass in a way, pooling into where the artist carved down in here to get a darker outlining tone. So different ways to use coloration in ceramics. Here's another George Segal piece. What do you think when you see this woman sitting alone at a bus stop, kind of in blue? She's looking a little saggy and droopy there. I mean, do we take it just for she's blue? I don't know. I'm going to leave that to you. Let's talk a little bit about the effects of colors that really can elicit emotional responses. Like yellows, are often linked with cheerfulness, right? The sunny personality. But also yellow is seen to be linked with cowardice. Red is often talked about as being very passionate, but it's also linked with aggression. Purple is linked with mysticism. Black is linked with death, white with purity, although, that can be a very cultural thing because in China, white is linked with death. But in general, also reds in the red range and the red analogous tones are thought to be very stimulating. Blues and greens are thought to be more calming. They've done studies talking about calming with prisoners before. They would put them in pink rooms and prisoners would get a little calmer, right? I mean, they're looking at ways to calm prisoners. They would be calm, though, only for about 15 minutes, and then they would sort of revert back to whatever sort of agitation level they might be. Blue is supposed to lower your blood pressure, but there again, that also later returns. So lots of room for study of color and how it affects people. We hear of yellows and reds and oranges as the warm colors. They're connected with fire. Blues and greens are the cool colors. They're connected with shade and the coolness of water. So I just threw in a couple other things here with natural coloration. I wanted you to see that beautiful blue glaze again. I mean, who knows how many years it took her to develop that. I wanted to finish off just by introducing you probably already have seen this on the internet. Colors are, there again, we talked a little bit about the white of in China being connected with death. So we've got Christianity has a lot of symbolism in color, and I thought I would just introduce this to you. There's all kinds of charts that will give you a little bit of a hint of what they might mean to other people. So I would just caution you when you do use colors, if you start to get into more symbolic uses of color or texture or whatever, familiarize yourself with these things. And sometimes it will even inspire you with your use of color. So have fun with that. I know it's what everybody loves is color.